So last night was, I think, the fifth Democratic primary debate, and it was interesting. A lot of stuff was going down. So my overall takeaway from the night, the thing that I cannot get out of my head is just how objectively terrible MSNBC was. This was technically an MSNBC/NBC and Washington Post debate, and it was abysmal. I mean, the framing of every question was terrible. There were things that were like not just bad, but also like way out of left field, like out of nowhere questions that were incredibly goofy. Some of them were gotcha right-wing framings, which it's fascinating that MSNBC is doing right-wing framings. And, the reason for that is they get accused so much of being liberal media, that it's an overcompensation move. It's like, okay, well, what if I frame this from, a right-wing perspective? They asked Elizabeth Warren one question about, like, would you spend U.S. taxpayer money to take down portions of the wall that are already built? What? So it's just so ridiculous. And you notice the opposite, by the way, with Fox News, since they're viewed as the Republican propaganda network because they are that. They get more leeway sometimes to ask better questions, and they do. Sometimes they do. Sometimes the Fox moderators are even better than CNN, MSNBC, and others. So anyway, it was bad. It was bad. It was 2 hours instead of the usual 3 hours. That part is good. So let's get into the winners and losers. So the first category I want to discuss is the no change category. I don't think they helped themselves. I don't think they hurt themselves. They're just there. And I expect a stall out in the polls. Wherever they're at right now, I think they're just going to stay there. In the no change category is Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren. Kamala Harris, it was clear she was trying to reassert herself a little bit and get back in that top tier of candidates. I don't think she succeeded. But I don't think she did herself any damage. Certainly was a better debate performance than the most recent ones. She had a good debate performance. What was it, the first debate or the second debate? One of the debates, she had a good debate performance, and it's been all downhill since then. Here, I think she just had a better showing than her worst performances, but not a great showing. And Elizabeth Warren, I mean, she was just there. I feel like she was there. She actually spoke. They did the breakdown of who spoke the most and who spoke the least, and she was one of the top in terms of taking up time, but it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like that to me. And everything was just kind of flat. I mean, every now and then, she did her usual thing where she went into her, she was asked an unrelated question and then she brought up her wealth tax. I mean, that's kind of Elizabeth Warren 101, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think it was a strong performance that landed or did herself any favors. So stall out is what I see there. The losers, without a doubt, Amy Klobuchar. I mean, I know she thinks she's keeping it real and telling tough truths to the left, but she just comes across as insanely tedious and pedantic, and it looks like she belongs in a Republican primary and not a Democratic primary. How many times can you tell us that, shut up, stop looking for bold change is never going to happen, bold change is stupid, go for me instead because I can get the moderates, and hilariously, that is not true. If anything, you get people like Bernie would hold the base and get crossover votes, get moderates, get new voters, so on and so forth. So, I mean, just every time she talks, it's like, why are you even on stage? It felt like she got way more time than almost anybody else on stage, because every time she talked, it was so tedious. It was like, okay, we get it. And you had to deal with her canned one-liners, which were just cringeworthy, but she thought she was nailing it. The thing about Klobuchar the ancillary thing about Klobuchar that drives me nuts is that every time she says something at the end of it, it's so obvious she thinks she nailed it. And meanwhile, the room is so really bad. The other one who had a bad night was Biden. Biden, it is definitely a trend here. Joe Biden used to be a really good debater, believe it or not, especially when he was one-on-one with Sarah Palin, when he was one-on-one with Paul Ryan. He ran circles around him back then. He's not doing that well, man. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Joe Biden is not doing that well. He he seems lost. He seems half asleep. He oftentimes loses his train of thought. Like it's a thing. Like it's a recurring thing. And, some people might say, well, hold on now. The last few times you said he's not doing well, and he's still hanging in there in terms of the polls. And my response to that is, well, yes and no. I mean, in Iowa, there was one time where he was leading by over 10 points, and now he's in fourth place. Now, you could say it's a bunched up fourth. That's true. So in other words, he's not out of striking distance, but he is falling. And even that national lead in some polls, he had an over 20-point national lead, and now in some polls, 5 or whatever it might be. But he's definitely trending in the wrong direction, man, and it doesn't seem like he can hold on. My feeling is anybody who actually pays attention to these things, anybody who watches the debates, they're going to walk away from it going like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I was ever considering him. Because again, a lot of his support is what I call default support. So it was not good. We'll get into some more moments later that Biden was involved in that were particularly bad. But I half feel bad for him and don't even want to discuss the areas where he's failing, because it's it feels unjust and not right, because I don't think he can control it. I think he has genuine deterioration. And then the other loser is Mayor Pete. I mean, Mayor Pete is, ugh. Now, there's an argument to be made that he didn't get the treatment that many people were expecting to the max. So, in other words, he's now leading in some polls in Iowa. And, they're questionable polls, less than 300 people, and only 13% of the people in the poll are under the age of 35. There are questions that are, oh, really? How legit is this poll really? But at the same time, his surge is real. He has moved upwards without a doubt. Now, the national polls tell a different story. He still has zero black support, still struggles massively with young people. But it's older liberals, and it's the establishment class who are now, uniting around him. And in this debate, yes, it's true that a lot of the top-tier candidates, they didn't really go at Pete in any direct sense. The candidates who are polling the highest, I mean. But he did not have a good performance despite that. He really was able to skate on a lot of things. In fact, it's a travesty and it's journalistic malpractice that the moderators didn't question him on legit faking black support, faking black endorsements, and using Kenyan stock photos for his campaign, and then doubling down when he got caught. They could have went after him for that. They didn't, so he skated on that. But he was still on wobbly legs and was overcoached. He seemed super overcoached and, too on his talking points, and he just seemed out of his league, and he is. He's in over his head. The dude's the mayor from South Bend, Indiana, and in some polls, he's leading in Iowa for the primary. Are you kidding me? And that moment got to him, it looks like. And of course, there was just the devastating moment. Now, I watched the debate twice because I have to for you lovely people, because I got to give you a full comprehensive breakdown, and I got to, pick the exact clips I want and whatnot. And the first time I saw Tulsi versus Pete, I thought, this is a tough back and forth. And if anything, and maybe it's 50-50, maybe Tulsi edged him out 60-40. I watched back. She obliterated Mayor Pete, devastatingly so, to the point where when she made her last argument, you look at his face, sheer terror on his face. You see the whole, you know how he's the standard politician and he goes into his persona? The whole politician shtick, you see it. You see the facade melt away, and you see a scared little boy with his little boy face on, I'm getting caught right now. So I think Tulsi really did a number on him. So Pete did really bad. So anyway, that's my breakdown. Warren, Kamala, no change. I think Yang had a really good night. Tulsi had a really good night. Booker and Bernie. Actually, there you go. I didn't even get to my winners. What am I doing? I'm skipping over winners. But no, winners were Andrew Yang had a fantastic night. Was very substantive, commanded attention in the room. I noticed whenever he was talking, I paid attention, and I was like, oh, okay, what's he saying? made a lot of good points. There's one moment that I think was too like hacky and playing into Democratic partisanship, where he was asked a terrible question about like, what would your first call to Vladimir Putin be? What would you say to him? And he's like, I'd say, I beat your man. And it's like, okay, don't feed into the red baiting hysteria nonsense. It's ridiculous. But apart from that, which was just a cheap shot in my opinion, everything else, he was very solid. He was on point. Tulsi had a good night because she was, a heat-seeking missile and took out anything in her path. Bernie had a wonderful night because he also, in the same way Yang did, he commanded attention in the room, and he fits this era so much better because it's a populist, anti-establishment era. It's a punchy era. Nobody wants to hear your shitty stump speech that goes on for 2.5 minutes, Amy Klobuchar, I'm looking at you, among others. But Bernie goes up there and he just, he lands his punches. He was talking about abortion and how, I'm sick and tired of the hypocrisy on the right where they say they believe in small government and then they want the government to regulate, what a woman does with her body. I mean, that's just a punch that lands. He says, hey, maybe we should prosecute the fossil fuel executives because they certainly knew about climate change and they moved forward anyway and they kept doing the wrong thing anyway. He hit Biden on the Iraq war. Just an overall very solid debate performance for Bernie. And we already have evidence that indeed he did do really well because his donation shot through the roof during the debate. He raised more in this debate than in any other debate. I think they got like 50,000 new donors or something during the debate, which is amazing. So Bernie had a great night. And then also Booker, I think, was the surprise winner of the night because it seems like he knows he's got no shot now because he doesn't have a shot now. And so he's just like, I'm going to let it fly. I'm just going to be a normal person up there. I'm going to get off my whole politician high horse and cadence and rhythm. And I'm just going to say whatever the hell I want to say. And I think that he came across like that. And, it reminded me, honestly, of in 2016 with Chris Christie. Chris Christie, when he was already out of it, he decided to, side with Trump and take out everybody in Trump's path in one of the debates. And he famously obliterated little Marco Rubio and said, like, there he goes again with his politician speak. And it just destroyed Marco's campaign from then on. But what you noticed is, oh my God, if Chris Christie just didn't care from the beginning and said, I don't care if I win or lose from the beginning. I'm just going to go out there and do my thing. He would have had a real chance because he's Trumpian when he doesn't care. And in the same way, Booker's not Trumpian, but Booker is a real human being who says stuff that's interesting when he doesn't care. If only he didn't care from the beginning. But he cared. And so he was always a standard politician, didn't budge in the polls even a little bit. And so now I think he's more auditioning for a VP position or a position in some administration because there's no way he's going anywhere given where he is at this point. But he was the surprise winner, and he certainly did a number on Joe Biden. So yeah, that's my breakdown. Winners, Yang, Tulsi, Booker, Bernie. No change, Warren and Kamala. Losers, Klobuchar, Mayor Pete, Biden, and of course, MSNBC.